So the purpose of tonight's public hearing is to present the recommendations from the zoning subcommittee. So we have 4 people who've been working on these recommendations. Then we're bringing it back to the whole planning commission for their consideration after your comments. And so we're definitely after input and ideas. And then we're getting ready to take this to city council, perhaps in March, next month. All right. Here's a timeline, proposed timeline, but it's adjustable. And here we are with the regular planning commission meeting and getting input tonight, considering what to do. I'm going to ask planning commission what they'd like to do. We may schedule another special meeting to take all the input that we get tonight, factor that in, and decide what the next step should be. And then perhaps take a first presentation to the city council on March 4th. Next slide, Mickey. So the big question is why update the zoning? And this is a pretty obscure thing, and but it's extremely important. And the main reason is that we just recently finished updating the city's master plan, and every city and every township by state law has to have a master plan, and it has to be updated every so often. It's about 10 years, if I recall correctly. And then the zoning code needs to follow in sync with the master plan. And that's a state law. The other thing beyond the state law is we want to be proactive in anticipating the future needs of Harbor Springs residents. There's a lot of information out there. We've learned a ton through the master plan process, and we think we can anticipate what our residents are going to need over the next 10, 20, and 30 years. But you'll help tell us what you think about that. And also, this is a pretty big one, is to provide more choices for residents about how they use their property and how they configure their property. And we'll talk about why that makes sense. And I'm going to show you some demographics in a little bit, and I'll show you how our population is older than most already, and probably going to age even faster than others. So what that means for our aging population and things that they might want to do with their property to help them. And the housing demand in the region remains extremely high, seems almost insatiable. And there's, we think, a partial mismatch between the types of homes in our zoning code that are currently favored and what residents are going to need and want. And so here are these key goals that we pulled out of the master plan that have to do with zoning and like housing in particular. And the first one is goal 3. New housing development and redevelopment will need to address the full economic spectrum of people who live, work, and recreate in the city. And there's some action items under each one of those. The next one is to develop a housing strategy in which residential parcels will be developed in a manner consistent with existing neighborhoods and will promote housing across the income spectrum. And we're also we've signed up to research and explore alternative housing types that would provide housing opportunity for a broad spectrum of persons seeking housing in the city. So that's the master plan that was worked on 2 years ago. It was adopted by city council, and now we're obligated to have a zoning code that supports that. On the economic development side of the master plan, a couple of key goals are that our town will be comprised of a viable community-oriented establishments that foster and recognize the city's resort and recreation theme. And it will be a home to a diverse mix of businesses and industries, et cetera, and develop a program that encourages the reduction of fossil fuel-based transportation activities and encourages pedestrian or clean energy-based transportation. So the master plan. And here are the resources that we've been using, studying, and learning about. And one is the zoning reform toolkit by the American Planning Association, independent group made up of professional planners. This book called Missing Middle Housing is the Bible of a movement to go back to some traditional roots in American towns and cities. And it provides some suggestions for ways that housing opportunities can be improved for people in your town. And the AARP has done a lot of thinking about housing. And they've got a booklet called Making Room, and it talks about what seniors are going to need. And from that. Then the final thing is from the Michigan Municipal League, which is an organization of cities, townships, and such in Michigan. And they've got pattern book for homes for the 21st century that draws on traditional forms and ideas. Pretty interesting. So let's talk about Harbor Springs demographic. This is what we learned during the master planning process, and it was stunning to us. In the gray is the city of Harbor Springs proper. In the blue is our surrounding area, 49740. So it's most of the 6 northern townships as well. And what really jumped out at us is our population above 60 years old is almost 55%. And in the surrounding areas, that contrasts to about 41%. So we're significantly older than our surrounding area and significantly older than the state average. Not that you know it from the people in this room. And here's the other thing that was a stunner to us, and that is the number of one-person households. And so 43% of our households in the city are made up of a single person. And that's a growing trend nationally and statewide as well, but we're way on the high side of it. And we're probably gonna get more so with that.
Excuse me, Bill, I'm getting a lot of text from people on Zoom. No, but they can't see the screen or the presentation at all.
Thank you.
Screen is sharing, so I'm not sure why I wouldn't see it, but.
All right, will you fill us in if you?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Brenda. And so our average household size is 2.15 people and slightly bigger than the surrounding, or slightly smaller than the surrounding area. So that really makes us think, we have all these homes and households with one person in them. And that was stunning to us. I don't know, maybe it's not to you. But it got us thinking about maybe what our residents are gonna need in the future. All right, next slide, please, Victor. So that's now, and here's what the future has in store for us, they say. The total county population is expected to grow by about 2.5% in the next 20 years. And that's actually really good in Michigan. Many counties are going to be in negative growth mode, but Emmett is going to be positive. And then when you break that down farther, the 60 plus age group over the next 20 years is expected to grow at about 15%. So that bubble of our age group is definitely growing and is expected to grow even more. So it'll be an even higher percentage. Here are the actual breakdowns in 5-year increments. In some places, the growth of the 60 plus group will be 18%. So they say. And with our higher population of older people, we suspect that we may even see faster 60 plus growth than that. And here's another thing that stunned us. We used to have about 300 more full-time residents than we do today. And that was only 20 years ago in the 2020 census. We're trying to think what could be the cause of that. And that decreasing household size probably plays a big role in it. And these are full-time residents. So these are people that have vote here and they have declared that this is their primary residence. And just think back, if you were here 20 or 30 years ago, does it seem less crowded now, more crowded? It's hard to tell, it's subjective, but yeah, we used to have 300 more people. And here are some comments that we've heard. These are anecdotal. They're from people that would say, I don't need this big house now. I wish I could find a nice smaller one near stores. And now that I'm older, I don't want to live in the country. I want to move into town for convenience. My parents want to stay in their home, but they would need a smaller one, smaller one-story house because they can't do stairs anymore. I'd love to have a low maintenance house in town for the 6 months out of the year and travel the rest of the time. We're a young couple and we don't even want a big home to take care of. And I'm not ready to own a home yet. I wish I could rent in this place. Those are typical comments that we've heard, but those may check with what you've heard, what you've been thinking, or they may not. And then conversation with a friend who's on the call tonight. And he said he and his wife have never run into anybody in Harbor Springs that would want to downsize and stay in town. That they would generally go to assisted living or long-term care, probably somewhere out of state, so maybe somewhere warmer. And that shocked me because I don't know about you, but my plan is to fight tooth and nail to stay out of long-term care or something like that. And I would appreciate some options that would let me stay in town. Anyway, AART says 86% of people said they wanted to remain in their current community and their current home if they possibly can. One more data point that we're taking in, all right? And then here are a couple of survey questions from the master plan the survey that we did in 2021. And first question is, what type of housing would you like to see in the city of Harbor Springs to encourage more within the city limits? And the biggest response was smaller single-family homes. So almost 68% of people said that. Then interestingly, the second biggest response was duplexes, triplexes, and townhouses. So that sure got us doing a lot of thinking. And, but interesting, look at the third one. A lot of people would like larger single-family homes. So opinions all over the place. Some would like smaller, some would like larger, some would like multi-unit approach. And there were also people weighed in on rental apartments and other options. So, and then this question was about neighborhoods in Harbor Springs should include quality housing for all residents of the community. And for the top three bars, 78% said that this was either most important, very important, moderately important. How can you say no to that? So those are all the data points and inputs that the planning subcommittee has taken in and is informed our recommendation. And so in summary of what's going on statewide and nationwide, households are getting older and smaller, and we're doing that in spades. One person households are on the rise. Here's an interesting one. The makeup of a household is fluid. And so it's not mom and dad and 2.5 kids anymore. It's one person, or it's actually roommates. It's maybe a grown child or two comes or goes for a while. And so a household isn't what it used to be. It's fluid and it's flexible. Multi-generational households are making a comeback. So the traditional family type approach where people take care of each other. There's a shortage of assisted living options. And from what I've read, that's likely to get worse in the future. There's fewer and fewer people to take care of us all when we need it. And then older people would like to stay in place or age in place. We mentioned that. And we learned that older and younger people would also like to walk and bike more and drive less. And then the last one is interesting, that older and younger people often are going to want similar housing options. And they may not prefer a traditional detached home like we all did. I think the final piece of data for you tonight, before we get into the recommendation that comes from all this, is that this is a study done by a housing advocacy group here in northern Michigan, and they used a consultant. And here's the demand for housing that they've identified over the next. We're already 2 years into it, so next few years. Countywide, it looks like about 3,300. There's a demand for 3,300 new housing units of some kind, combination of rental apartments and homes to purchase. The data is only at a county level, so we kind of derive what it would be for the Harbor Springs, greater Harbor Springs area. And it's significant. I can't add that up, 600, 720, maybe something like that. And then in the city of Harbor Springs, if we were to take our proportionate share, there's a conceptual demand for 125,000 units of some type. It doesn't mean we have to solve 125,000 housing. That's not our rule. But just the data point is that the demand seems to be there. So the implications are, we see a partial mismatch between the types of homes that our zoning code favors and what residents are likely going to want in the future. We think they're going to want smaller, simpler homes, low maintenance, no maintenance home and yard, house and yard, adaptability for changing household structure and size, private space for extended family members or caregivers, and more dwellings that can be rented by year-round residents. Very, very few of those today. Okay. Big breath. Those are the inputs, the data, the demographics, everything that we've learned that now factors into the recommendation. Okay. Linda, are you here? What are you hearing?
They're okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you. Here's the start of the recommendations that we're making for the zoning code. Today's zoning code is 160 pages or something, or maybe more. And it's clunky, more than clunky. Looks like it was written on a typewriter. Columns and some crude tables don't line up. The data is hard to parse for people who actually use it and looking to build a house or remodel. It's pretty tough. Jeff spends a lot of his time translating it, and so it's ready for an update. And what we're looking to do is simplify it, streamline it, modernize it, use tables and illustrations where possible instead of words, and remove requirements that are already addressed in the building codes. And then we'll sync with the county and the nearby townships where that makes sense for Harbor Spring, and to reduce or eliminate bureaucratic processes. All right, take a drink here.
Just to expand on your topic there, Bill, the existing format of our current zoning code, I think, is the same format that it started in 1976. So
Did we even have a zoning code before that?
we didn't have a zoning code. We had some ordinances. I think somebody brought in an ordinance book of some zoning regulations from back in the 50s. So we had some regulation.
All right, one of the main parts of a zoning code are zoning districts. These are different areas where different things are possible or prohibited. And we have 17 zoning districts in our little 1.5 mile square city. And I'm sure there were good reasons for that structure, but it's really become difficult for residents to understand and professionals to use and Jeff to administer. And we think that there's a good way to simplify that. So I would like Dawson to pass. So this is a before and after. We'll just pause for a second.
Yeah.
This is the experience.
That's where we are now.
That's good.
If you don't wish one, please turn it to me, because I'm not sure that is not good. So this is the original, this is the current. And then we need to have our position. And then somewhere we have.
Folks on Zoom, sorry for the delay. We're passing out some maps here. Paper copies to what's on. If you have, it's more like. No, you find your property on there. Okay. All right, you ready? All right, so the medical is recommending that we could collapse zoning districts from 17 down to 9 and simplify this pretty rapidly. And here's the detail on how the zone would be collapsed. And so if you're finding your home, it's likely currently in one of these R ones, the AR. That's where the vast majority of our territory in the city is located, in the residential districts. And what we're proposing is that all those could be collapsed into something we're calling residential neighborhood, RN. That would be by far the biggest district, and that's the kind of peachy colored one that you see on the new zoning map. And then we're recommending that the areas where we have waterfront homes today be all collapsed into a single residential waterfront district. There's no change to the mobile home district. And residential multiple stays, residential multiple, there's very few places where there are apartment buildings and those kinds of things. The central business district gets slightly expanded. We're collapsing zoning districts above the bluff into a new district called convenience business. So the only business district below the bluff will be the CBD. Waterfront, these are not waterfront homes, but waterfront parks and properties and such. And manufacturing stays the same. That's just in a very small area up where the book storage sheds are quite early. And then the community district are things like government buildings and parks. Okay, next slide. All right, just last week, 1 week ago, we heard a lot from the folks whose homes are in the agricultural district today. And, they made some really good points, I think. And one of the main points, it was a nuance that I had missed when we were doing this, and it was, yeah, we understand you're gonna let us keep doing agricultural things, if we come and get special land use. And we thought about that for about a minute and said, yep, that's not right. And we need more government, we need more regulation and commission. So Victor came up with an idea for what's called an overlay district. And here's how it would be, if you look at the western properties and at the far edge of the city that are staying in the agricultural zoning districts. And that would give our agricultural property holders by right use for agricultural uses, including farm operations, market gardening, greenhouses, nurseries, orchards, vineyards, and we threw in beekeeping as a bonus. Coming thing. And this would apply to all the properties within the overlays, and it doesn't expire, it doesn't go away. If you sell your property, it passes to the next owner. It lets us keep the simplified structure, but it also protects the agricultural uses for our residents there. You have no permissions, no anything. So I thought that was a pretty good solution from Victor.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just gonna give you a really quick view of what uses would be allowed in each of the proposed districts. Residential neighborhood, where a lot of people's homes would be single family, duplexes, triplexes, which would require special land use, and accessory dwelling units. So these would be like guest cottages, and we're going to talk in depth about each of these concepts. So this is where people have some concerns, and we're going to talk about those tonight. And then for commercial uses, it would be home occupations, or in the wrong. Sorry. Go back, I said, yeah. Home occupation, the thing we're calling an accessory commercial unit, something that's garnered a lot of attention. I can get your thoughts on that. And then all of our residential properties with water access would be in the residential waterfront district. What color is that? What color? Blue. That's right. So you can see that on the proposed zone map. And there would be the same. Residential multiple, that's the current RM district, is very small. This is multifamily, 5 cluster housing. You could have a single family if you wanted to, and there are more commercial uses possible under the plan in the residential multiple. Mobile home park stays the same. Central business district, this is the business district below the bluff downtown. And what's new here is we're rolling together the former B1, B2, and CBD into it. And what's new is now we're suggesting some design guidelines for buildings that are going on major remodel or being built in downtown districts to, but still allow enough latitude for an owner to leave. And commercial uses are all the ones you can imagine. Convenience business, so this is above the bluff, it would include IGA, it would include the 2 strip malls, and tons of commercial uses would be there as they are today. And somebody could do residential there if they needed to or wanted to. The waterfront district has the same boundaries as today's. There are no residential uses allowed there. And commercial uses are things like recreation, private club, marina, boat storage, marine construction, and more. The manufacturing district is the one on White Road where the boat sheds are. And there are no residential uses allowed up there, but the commercial uses would be boat storage, self-storage, distilling, brewing, and wine manufacturing, and a tasting room, food manufacturing, and many more. And whether anyone would ever do those kind of uses up there, I have no idea. Then the last district is the community district, same boundaries as things like parks, public services, government buildings, and schools. So that's thrilling stuff. And we'll come back. Thank you.
One question?
Yes, if you wouldn't mind, yeah, for sure. And the next concept that we're recommending is called a flag lot. And this is where an owner who had a very deep lot, if they wanted to, could sell the back portion of their lot, and the new user would have access with the driveway, the is next to the first house. So it's an idea that could allow the construction of a very few modest sized homes. And there aren't many of these that are gonna be configured. It was a very small scale idea. And yeah, so the name comes from the pole and then it's the flag. All right, let's talk about multi-unit. And I know this is an area of big concern. I was for me too in the beginning. My thinking has evolved so much since learning about all this stuff and examining it. And duplexes have a bad rap. We all know what a bad duplex looks like. And if you not for you, maybe it isn't one that you want in your neighborhood. But in learning about them, we're seeing designs now like this. You know, doors on different faces, as Mark Boudet has and informed us, articulated facades, and he's had told us a bunch of architectural terms for what something attractive. And so all the experts in our study, we think this could be an efficient approach to help some people use their property to meet their changing household needs. They could have a family member live on the other side, they could have a caregiver live on the other side, they could rent the other side as well. And the key thing is, we said, it has to meet exactly the same dimensional requirements as any other home, any other single unit home. They can't be bigger, it's going to be closer to the street, closer to the side, anything, and they have to have these features that we define to make for an attractive kind of structure. And that's why we think they're not harmful, or wouldn't be hurtful, but they could be very positive addition to a neighborhood or a community. You'll tell me what you think about that. Okay. Triplexes. Hey, Vic, money. And we'll share it. Thanks. Triplexes have the same advantages, but they be required by special land use in every district. And again, they have to meet exactly the same size requirements as a single unit house. If there's a vacant lot in your neighborhood, somebody wants to come build a single family house, they have to conform to it. In a sense, they have an imaginary box that they have to build inside of. And the requirements would be precisely the same. One of these might have 2 or 3 doors to it, but it's gonna look like a house. And quadplexes are a very niche thing, and be surprised if anybody would ever build one. And it would be allowed in a residential multiple and E1 business, unlike Let that sink in for just a second, and then we'll go to next topic, which we think can be pretty useful. So the new name for a guest cottage is an accessory dwelling unit. And it's had these for 100 years. They're all over town. A lot of them look like that, with the garage, apartment above the garage. And we actually, and some look now, they could be standing. And we do have guest cottages on various houses. So I'm going to diverge for a minute and talk about another philosophy that we talk about in the planning commission all the time. And that is personal choice and property rights. And every time it seems like we make a decision, we're always balancing somebody's property rights to do with the property, what makes sense for them, what they need to do, versus does it harm the rest of the community somehow? And I think what you might have seen with our 17 zoning districts is we've had tighter and tighter regulation, more rules, more permission required to do anything. And it's grown up for fine reasons over the years, but we think it's due for a reset. And what we're trying to do is find opportunities to give property owners more choices and more options without permissions to do what you need to do with your property. So if you're a free market kind of a person, and you're a person who doesn't like regulation, we hear you, and that's what a lot of these recommendations are based on. And here's a particularly egregious example. In our current zoning code today, if you, anybody have a guest cottage? Yeah, if you want to build one, you need to come and appear before the planning commission. You need to, the support of your neighbors. You need to present your plans and you need to swear to 7 different criteria before the planning commission can give you approval to use your guest cottage. And we call them guest quarters. And so here's the point that we've gotten to in Harbor Springs, and that is, if you have a guest cottage, you can have only family members and friends stay there. They can only stay for 21 days, 21 consecutive days. And then they have to go away for at least 30 days. I mean, that's where we are. And that's why we think it's time for a reset and roll back some of these restrictions that just don't make sense anymore. Do you remember during COVID when families wanted to be together and many came up here? Mine did. And I just don't think it's right for government to tell you who can stay on your property and for how long, and how long you have to go away for. So that's what we're trying to do. There's some great comments flying around about government taking over Harbor Springs. Plus the funniest thing, because we're really trying to go the other way, to have less regulation where it's possible and to give property owners more choices. And you'll tell us what you think about that concept, I'm sure. Okay. So the benefits of an ADU are that they could be one of the tools that a homeowner could use to adapt to their changing household configuration. Could provide housing for younger or older family members, grown kids come here when they're trying to get launched and give you a little space and give you each a little space. It could be a way that an older resident could house a caregiver or a caretaker. In fact, it might be the edge that somebody would need to hire a caregiver, because it's going to be hard to do. And it could be a low maintenance opportunity for older residents. And we think it retains the character of the neighborhood. Some people are going to say, you're nuts, Bill, that destroys our character of our neighborhood. We don't think so, because we got them all over today. We probably have more than 100. We approve 3 or 4 a year, and they're everywhere. We've had them for 100 years. Okay. Oh, and it could not be used as a short-term rental. So property rights and all that, but you know, we're going to draw the line there. And so here's the next concept. This is a derivative of that last one. And this has also gotten a lot of attention. Love that. Looking for your input on this one. This is called an accessory commercial unit. So this is a chance to operate a micro business and perhaps incubate a new business idea. And it would be something that you could operate on your property. It could be attached or it could be detached. And you have to be the business operator. You can't contract it up to somebody, and you could, only you could operate this thing. It's not going to be in your front yard. It's not a kiosk. And it would be limited to a few low impact businesses. Has a maximum size of 800 square feet, and it requires special land use approval. And here are the businesses that we spec'd out for you. Professional services like accounting, architecture, etc., counseling, tutoring, art lessons, music lessons. People have given piano lessons in their rooms for centuries. We set a coffee shop, or a cafe, yoga, hair salon, barbershop, seamstress, tailor, alterations. Yes, Tony.
Bill, can you go back one slide? There was one point you skipped over. I think it's important to mention. Size of 800 square feet or 50% of principal residence.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So if you have a 1,200 square foot home footprint, you could only have a 600 square foot accessory commercial unit. And the benefits are, we think it strengthens the 15-minute walkable city and provides some valuable services closer to home potentially, could prevent some driving, builds a sense of neighborhood community, and maybe an opportunity for a homeowner to start a business, earn some extra income. And I think it could attract some full-time residents. It could be kind of a good work opportunity. If you think that's radical or uncomfortable, I did too. Again, this is one where my thinking can be done. And we did a survey of longtime residents. And here are the kind of businesses in the neighborhoods that they remembered. Included flower shops, which we still have today, and a party store, fish market actually, vacuum and sewing machine repair, bed and breakfast, hair salon, barber, hotel, motel, lumberyard, sawmill, we're not recommending sawmill or auto repair. Restaurants, paint retailer, dressmaker, gas station, commercial flower garden, resale shop, even a tea house on Pine Street. Tom Graham, he able to help us flesh out our listing. That was their problem. You could have an accessory structure on your lot, and that could be a detached garage, it could be a shed, it could be any number of buildings, any number of purposes. It could be a pergola, is that right, Jeff? Pergola would be an accessory structure. Yeah. So we've set guidelines for those. We've actually made those guidelines a little stricter where they, an accessory structure has to be a bit farther from your property line, that give your neighbors a little more space. And so you can have accessory structure, which is a garage. A derivation of that is the accessory commercial unit, which has to meet exactly the same placement and specs, so it's not out in your front yard. And an accessory dwelling unit has to meet the same specs as well. So those are the two additional uses of accessory structure. The other thing that we're really working on is reducing administrative processes by setting clear standards. And this is one that we think could really help residents as they bring new ideas forward. And we're recommending more site plan approvals by committee, by a smaller working committee, rather than this whole group. And there's probably a 60-day process that you have to go through to bring a special land use approval to the planning commission. Pretty thorough documentation, and the city has to notify your neighbors, and it has to schedule a public hearing. We think that's overkill these days. We're looking for ways to streamline that. And this is what we came up with. It was this administrative committee made up by city staff, a member to the planning commission, and a professional planner. And then anybody can still call for a full commission review if they want to. But another way we're trying to get a little bit less government and less delay and less fees for residents. And then here's an interesting one. Many of our homes and properties are in some type of association. If your property is in a condo association, you have condo bylaws that regulate what you can do with your property. If your property is in a homeowner association or a landowner association, we have tons of associations, or it's under some other kind of a lease or deed restriction. The uses that we just talked about may not be allowed, probably aren't allowed. HOAs are notoriously strict. And some of these ideas really only apply to a lesser number of the properties in the city. And when a person buys a property in an association, they voluntarily agree to the rules and the standards that are part of it. And that's great. There are some very pleasant associations, and that's great. There are really nice, Birchwood is fantastic. Windward outside the city, those are all great. But philosophically, our thought was for the other 75% of the properties in the city, why don't we give them a little bit more latitude? And people on the planning commission kind of favor a bit more variety and vitality in the other areas. And if people want to be part of an association and have strict regulations, then that's great. But we think we have a chance for a bit more freedom. I think that's the last slide.